why does the eye need moisture? And secondly, the pupil reflex that takes place. Now, you need to know that moisture is present in the eye through two different sources. First is the tear gland, which produces constant moisture constantly. And secondly, the transparent thin layer over the surface of the eye, conjunctiva and cornea, they both produce mucus to provide moisture for the eyes. Why is moisture so necessary? Firstly, moisture is necessary to wash away the dust particles, because if the eyes are dry, the dust particles and the bacterial growth will be very much efficient. Secondly, light rays that are entering into our eyes from all different directions, they need to be refracted so that they can enter through the pupil, which is the only opening that is present in our eyes. So the moisture helps the light rays to refract and enter through the pupil only. Then it also keeps the eye hydrated and eases the diffusion of oxygen in the eye for respiration of eye cells. You need to know that this structure of the eye is directly exposed to the external environment, and as most of our skin, which is exposed to the external environment, is made up of dead cells, this is not made up of dead cells, and these cells are very much living, which means they need oxygen for respiration to continue their cellular activities. And for that, this special organ eye is specialized to absorb oxygen directly from the atmosphere, and this moisture layer provides a suitable environment for the diffusion of moisture and usage. We should note that the diffusion and the obtaining of oxygen is not limited to only this, because at night when our eyes are closed, eye cells are still respiring and they are still carrying out their cellular activities, and for that we have another structure which is known as choroid, which helps bring about oxygen at the back of the eye as well. And then lastly, moisture is necessary for living cells in the eye to thrive in an isotonic environment. Isotonic environment means that the water potential inside the cells and water potential in the outer environment of the cells remains the same, so there is no osmosis taking place and cells are thriving. The second thing that we need to discuss is the pupil reflex. As you all should remember, that a reflex is a reflex action that has a stimulus, that has involve neurons, the sensory neurons, the motor neurons. It involves a response and a coordination in the central nervous system, which is either the brain or the spinal cord. Now, in this pupil reflex, as eye is positioned in our skull, which is near the brain, so the brain is the organ which is going to carry out the integration. Now, we have two situations. The first situation is that we have dim light present. Now, dim light means that the image formed will be not clear. In order for the image formation to be clear, we need maximum light rays from that dim light environment to enter into our eyes. For that very reason, the pupil will dilate. The pupil will dilate so that maximum light rays can enter from this pupil and we can have a clear image formation. In order for the pupil to dilate, the iris muscles, which are antagonistic muscles, the circular and the radial muscles, are going to contract or relax. In the situation where we have dim light and pupil needs to dilate, the radial muscles will contract and the circular muscles will relax, causing the pupil to dilate. Now, in the next situation, we have bright light. In the bright light, we need less light intensity to enter into our eyes, because the higher the light intensity enters into our eyes, the more damage it does to the photoreceptor cells, which are there to produce images. So, in a bright light scenario, only a small amount of light will be enough to produce a very clear image, and for that very reason, the iris muscles are going to cause the pupil to constrict. Now, the pupil will constrict or contract and decrease in size to prevent light entering into the eyes, and only a minimum amount of light will enter. You can remember the contraction of circular muscles in this pupil contraction. Basically, when the pupil needs to constrict, the circular muscles contract, which is a 3C's scenario. Circular muscles contract and pupil constricts. And as they are antagonistic muscles, we automatically know that the radial muscles are going to relax in this bright light scenario. This is known as the pupil reflex. Brain is the integration center. Sensory neurons from the optic nerve that is present, we are going to see that, takes the nerve impulses to the brain, and the brain, after integrating, tells the delivers the response through the motor neuron to the eyes, and iris muscles carry out the response, which is contraction, and that's how pupil dilates or contracts.